Captain Cook.
No, Jacques Cartier. Cook is for Australia, Cartier is for Canada.
Oh.
I am Jacques Cartier.
Welcome on board. You welcome on board, everybody. Just watch your step while we're getting in. Volcanic plateau that is in the center of the southern France. From the highest summit that is itself a former volcano called the Puy de Sancy, there are two sources that are flowing, joining together the Dordogne and the Dordogne, giving birth to that river that's going to reach the ocean after 483 kilometers of run. This Dordogne River is actually the fifth more important major river in France. It passed through 5 departments. In the ancient days, this river was suitable for navigation from the month of May to the month of October. For that, actually, the melting of the snow upon the Massif Central is going to elevate this water a few meters and augment as well the turbine. This is why it was at the beginning of the month of May that there was the first trip was established from Sudan to Gulf. The speed of the stream is over here is around 5 to 7 kilometers an hour as an average. So with such speedy waters, it was easy to reach the city in less than 15 days. Actually, people used to stop at night time. Nobody was sailing into the dark over such speedy waters. All through the run in the direction of Bordeaux, we used to take on our board all the barrels of wine that were waiting in the quays. There were also some small barrels of nut oil, that is a local delicacy, that was in favor on the table of the aristocratic people upon Europe. So in the ancient days, it was also part of our ship. After 15 days of this descent, we were discharging our boat, and then we were filling it up with salt. Essentially 6 tons of that salt that was essential for the conservation of food. I would appreciate that people that don't give a flying fuck about what I'm saying to speak a little bit lower. Thank you very much.
We're listening, we're listening.
Well done.
Wow, I'm a French Canadian, I'm some kind of nasty, you know.
Yeah.
The Dordogne is a way to transport goods, and in the ancient days it was 15 days to go down. Actually, it was to go up, that was another story, because of the speed of the stream. This is why in the ancient days we used to rely on men that were pulling the boats from the bank at your left. There used to be a trail over there of 400 miles long. It was permitting the 30 guys necessary for the pulling of our boat to use the string to do so. There were not a single tree along that bank because the men were using rope to pull up the boat. There was 30 guys that were necessary for such a boat that is 6 tons of weight. There were larger boats. Some of them were needing 100 men. These were the 50-ton boats. So in the ancient days, to go up the river was longer than to go down. Most of the time, 2 weeks, maybe sometime 3. So it means that we need more than a month to make a come and go. In these conditions, it was essential to understand that we were making only 3 trips during a single summer time. At the month of October, the level of the Dordogne will be so low that it won't afford us to pass because there won't be the 40 centimeters of water that are necessary for our flatboat boat to pass through. Gabar, the name of those flatboats, is not a French word, it is a Greek word. In the ancient Greek language, gabaros mean nutshells. Those boats were already useful on the Black Sea, while the Greeks still having some colonies along the actual Ukrainian coast. So you could understand that because of that, it was quite easy for us to compete once we're going to have the train in the area. The train's going to be in Sarlat in 1883, and from that date it was faster than us. It could do the same ride, but just over a few hours rather than a few weeks. This is why the train is going to replace us. The last Gabar has reached the harbor of Dordogne in 1921. Today this river is not suitable anymore for navigation, and the reason is the installation of 10 hydroelectric dams. There are 6 of them in front of you and 4 behind. Because of that, this river is the second area for hydroelectricity production into this country after the Rhone River that is along the Mediterranean coast, as you probably know. Actually, 80% of the energy income of that country is coming from nuclear plant, making France the second country for nuclear use after Japan. Maybe you are a specialist of flags, and maybe you have noticed that we've got a Quebec flag over in our boat. It's not because of me. It could have been, but it is not the case. Actually, it is due to the 10 hydraulic dams that I was talking about. In Quebec, we've got one specialty over than winning hockey games. It is to install some fish escalators, and this is what we have done for our poor underdeveloped cousins. Today all those fish are back into the river, and it is due to the engineer of Hydro-Québec, the same company that is giving the electricity for Bosnia, Russia and all the east coast of the United States. This is why we have installed those fish escalators, and our cousins do appreciate it because there are still a Quebec flag all along those dams. We used to be the first colony of that country overseas actually, and we are still remember France as our grandmotherland. There are some beaches along the river, and actually it is probably the cleanest that you can find all along this country. There are many reasons for that, and the first one is that in 2012 the UNESCO has classified the whole valley as a reservation for biodiversity. We've got 34 species of fish over here, including seagoing fish like salmon, eels, lamprey and sea trout, even if we are 250 kilometers from the seashore. Actually, there's also large pikes, and it is the pike season now. So some of them has been retired from the river recently that were more than a meter long. So you can eat your fish without any problem. Over here, there's no source of pollution upon the river. Just take the time to observe if your fish has got a swimming bath suit. If it is the case, it is not a fish, obviously. That's a lot of information, I do know. So this is why you're going to see some people enjoying themselves on those tiny beaches. Actually, it is due to the fact that during century there were men that were pulling the boats. So it has created some juridical conditions that are called a servitude. It is considered as a public land on the first 5 meters. This is why all through the summertime we've got a lot of people that are going down this river with canoes, sometimes 10 days of trip, and by this way they could install themselves, their family and their tent on the nearest shore as long as they are in the first 5 meters and don't light any fire, because we are in a natural reservation. We've got 20 species of birds. For the lady that are trying to make some pictures, maybe you're gonna see some herons at this hour, and also white egrets. That are the larger fishing birds along this coast. We've got also some praying birds, 3 species of falcons, including the peregrine falcon that is also present in North America. All the southwest of this country is constituted by limestone cliff. Those cliffs are the inheritance of the era where the sea was over that landscape. It was 300 million years ago. At that time, this country was submerged partly by an ocean, and because we were close to the equator line, this stuff has been constituted by the effect of the pressure and the deepness. This is why this limestone's got fossils inside of it, including oysters that could be found at the summit of that cliff, precisely over your head. There are also some coral reef over here, showing that once that place has been submerged. It was before the dinosaurs, actually.
French people have every road.
Thank you.
That limestone should be white, just like the Dover Cliff, for example, but obviously it is not the case. This limestone is colored by 2 metals, and the first one is known by everyone. Up there you get some chunk of it. It is in orange iron oxide, or rust if you prefer. The other stuff that you can see in display along that rock is of a grayish pale color. It is called manganese. It is one of the 3 the non-ferrous metal that are important into our world, including for new technologies. There's a lot of manganese into your cell phone. That stuff has been used as a pigment into the cave of Lascaux. There's not a single teaspoon of charcoal over there. Everything that isn't black is manganese. Everything that isn't color is iron oxide. Actually, those stones were crushed to turn to powder and then mixed up with reindeer fat. Most of the sites that I have excavated over here when I was a student in prehistoric fields in Bordeaux were essentially coming from reindeer. 94% of the food income actually over here is from that animal. Before the magret de canard, there should have been a magret de caribou. Over the front of our boat, you will see some chalk that is thinner than limestone. This is why this much more whiter stone could show you the manganese as that black stuff that seems to go down along the cliff, just like some kind of pollution. It is not pollution actually, it is due to the vegetation. Those trees gonna add some manganese to their inner tissues once they will grow up. When the trees are dead and enter into decay, it is the raindrop that's gonna take the manganese with it and put it on display over the cliff, including the black spot that you can see in front of us. Manganese was also used by our closest ancestor, Neanderthal men, that were the first Europeans. Those people has mixed up the manganese with some beeswax and also some resin from pine, forming the first adhesive, the first glue that were used by prehistoric people to fix the flint arrowhead at the summit of the emperor. So this is one of the oldest chemical receipts that our mankind has produced.
But this is manganese, this black stuff on the piece of limestone.
Would you like another one?
No, thank you.
So as you probably know, the cave of Lascaux is only 20 miles from here, and it is probably the most famous of all those prehistoric caves that has been discovered over the continent since the 19th century. In all, over the ancient world, we've got 400 decorated caves by prehistoric people. We've got to note that in France, we've got the highest amount of them, 150 into our inner border, followed by Spain, that's got 120 on its territory. Let's observe that only in that small part of the country that is called the Dordogne, we are sheltering 50 of the 150 decorated caves belonging to the nation, 1/3 for a single area. That is quite important. Because the chalk is a little bit thinner than the limestone, you can see over here the lines that has been formed by the passing of the stream during a certain amount of time during the year. Actually, this river is going to have a large margin between the lowest and the highest point. This margin is about 7 meters. I mean, the size of the mat pole behind that gentleman that is serving you. So you could understand that because of that, during the winter, nobody was sailing upon this river that is at its summit at that time. The ancient Celtic population used to call this river the Dordogne, that means the wild river. The Romans gonna turn it into the Dorognianus, then it's gonna be the Dordogne in the Middle Age, that is quite close to the local language, that is Occitan and not French. And then it's gonna be turned to Dordogne finally in the 18th century. Before the Revolution, that part of the French land, that was a kingdom at that time, was called the County of Périgord. Périgord is the name of that county that has entered into the Carolingian Empire in the year 778 AD. So it has existed 1,300 years before the Revolution. And all through that long period, it was the same family that was in charge, the Count of Périgord, the family of Talleyrand. Maybe if you know about Napoleon, you know about his foreign affairs minister that was himself the last Count of Périgord, Charles Maurice de Talleyrand. At the revolution in Paris, the people is going to decide to divide this country not among ancient domain that was a trace of the monarchy, but to erase all that memory and to rebaptize the map of that country according to the main rivers. This is why you are in the Département de la Dordogne that's got the same size as the Count Périgord. The word Périgord is coming probably from the name of the Celtic population before the Roman conquest. Actually, Caesar is mentioning it in its writing in that famous book called The War of the Gaul. He has mentioned that at around the city of Périgueux, he has met up with a Celtic nation that he has qualified by a Greek name. Caesar was doing that all the time. So he called them Petrokoroi, people of the rocks. And probably that term that will be translated to Petrokor in French is going to be the basis for the word Périgord that will emerge at the beginning of the Middle Age. You have seen a few canoes, but we are almost at the end of the day. Actually, each day between July to October, since 5 years that I'm working over here, it is around 6,000 canoes per day that you can confront upon this lovely river. This is the highest amount of them that you can find all over territory. Frankly, sometimes this river is looking like a Los Angeles highway on a Friday night. Precisely. Not the last Friday night. Qu'est-ce que je vais dire?
Shallow, isn't it?
The level of the Dordogne is too low over here for us to continue. So we got to make a new turns along those charming
Yeah, he sees a
and
fish.
starting our way back toward the city of La Rogachac. Actually, the level of the Dordogne is catastrophic. In the ancient days, it was in October that we have such a level, and we've got more than a month and a half of advance. That's showing you, actually, this peak of the global warming, especially in France, because we've got Mediterranean Sea and Atlantic that were along our border. So those two extension of water is gonna warm up as well. That means that till the end of that century, we can suppose that in Marseille, the most southern city of France, there will be the same climate that we've got today in Algiers, in northern Africa. Even the Englishmen are now producing some tasteable red wine, and it is making the French people freaking out. You're gonna see sometime you're gonna have some champagne coming from the islands in Scotland.
Hello, bonjour. that's the shame. On the bed, and then we went on the elephant ride and the elephant
Would you like another beer?
Yes, please. Thank you.
This being great.
It's good.
Thank you.
I know we're buying good stuff for you.
You didn't tell me you had it.
Would you like one?
That was the first one we did. We only met with him once. Thailand. We went to Hawaii from Thailand. Oh, Thailand. No, we did.
These are the best. Rosé looks slightly better.
I'm sold out with the beer. Sold out. Yeah.
village has been founded at the beginning of the Middle Age, in the 9th century precisely. On the year 843 AD, the Vikings will venture themselves to Dordogne. Actually, the Vikings were quite fond of the monasteries along the Dordogne that were defended. So because of that, they used to raid those monasteries, finding over there the gold and the silver that were part of the sacred object. Actually, from the flames of the hell, the Viking didn't care because they were still pagans for more than 2 centuries. So for that reason, the Abbey of Sarlat, that is behind you at 20 kilometers, decide to establish over here a landlocked position to stop the Vikings before they could reach the city of Sarlat. Sarlat is a bowl-shaped city, so it won't be possible to defend it in case of a siege. This is why the place has been chosen to establish over here 2 large walls, completing the natural disposition of the already seating wall that is behind the village. This rocky hill is 120 meters high. It's going to be the founding wall of that fortress. So we're going to have a first wall along the banks, to twice the size of the white wall that you can see behind, and a second wall of the same length inside the village. With those 2 large walls, actually the village is safe. The Vikings will not venture themselves to attack it, and because of that, this village has been able to repulse the Viking. So the Abbey of Sarlat is so happy of the result that it will decide to offer to the people of that village as locals a tax break. A tax break that's gonna last 700 years.
No.
Actually, this is a guided tour, sir. So you got to wait that I'm mentioning the term. Remember that when you were in college, sir, it was the same thing. I'm gonna speak to you to those windows right now, but now you sitting down. Thank you very much. The 2 windows are a rock shelter. In case of the arrival of the Englishmen, people used to take their belongings going up there waiting for the truth to be back. Actually, after a few years, it has turned into a flat. There were people that used to live there and paying their rent to the city hall till 1947. I know it is sounding weird to your North American ears, but there's a good reason to live up there. The temperature, it is always 13 degrees whenever you are in summer or in winter. That means that you're gonna spare a lot of money about climatization and eating. If you're interested, just present your offer at Mr. the Mayor and include that the strange Canadian have sent you in, you're gonna have a reduction of 10%. So our village was taking occasion of that rock, as you have noticed, and it will be untakeable all through the 100-year war, meaning that in 1453, this village was probably at its highest height in terms of population, around 1,600 people. Today, in winter days, you know how many people are living up there? 14. 14. It's quite practical for parties, 1 and the number 4 just after. So you can understand that the local village during the winter days are absolutely desert. And the generation is probably the people that are over the 70s. That is meaning that during the winter time, this place is quite deserted. All the young people will go to Bordeaux, Toulouse or Paris to make their studies. And this is why the place is so tranquil during the winter days. Beg your pardon? 70. Yes, indeed. It was not to say that it was old. It was just to mean that the people that were living up there are most of the time retreaty. So this is why they don't have a large social activity during the winter days. Actually, all those villages are alive only during the summer. This is what I was meaning. My mother is 74. I won't say something bad about someone that is getting age. I'm going to be one day as well. I'm already 53 years old. So it was not an insult in any way, and I do apologize if you have felt it this way. This church has been achieved in the 14th century. It has been for a long time the only parish church in the area, and the wall that is forming the entrance is the last remnant of those 10-meter high wall that used to protect us against enemies, but also against the flooding during the springtime, because the water of this Dordogne is changing all through the year, and with some large 10-meter high wall, we were well protected. Behind the church, you will see some tropical plants, including aguavas that are coming from Mexico. Over here we've got a microclimate. That rock is oriented full south. That means that we've got 3 degrees more than all the surrounding village according to the local meteorological authority. So this is why those plants are growing since the 60s. The lovely Round Tower Manor is the place where the first telescope has been in use into this country. You know probably the telescope has been made by Galileo Galilei. And the man that was born here in 1540 was called Jean Tard. He was the personal priest of Henry IV, himself a former Protestant before being king of France. So he's going to take that man to Rome. He's going to meet up with Galileo Galilei during its famous process, and the due process. And this is why he will receive from the hand of Galileo Galilei the first telescope to be in use into this country, bring back from Rome, and use at the summit of this tower in 1615. This is the birthplace of French astronomy. Jean Tard is considered as such at least. The upper shelter that you can see up there with a stair that is leading to it was a place where a bishop has been installed during the religious war. There were 8 religious wars to this country, and the last one in 1589 has seen a Protestant army led by a French nobleman, himself a Protestant, to occupy the city of Sarlat. This is why the Bishop of Sarlat, coming from a trip to Bordeaux, here on the moor, that he won't be able to go back into its home because the city is then occupied by the Protestant. This is why the bishop's going to stay as a refugee up there for 10 years, waiting for truce to appear between the Protestant and the Catholics. It's going to be the case in 1598. So you can guess that our bishop has stayed over there for more than 10 years. Are you okay? So roll the boat. The boat is much more tougher than that. You can see 2 yellow spots up there. These are belonging to the greatest catastrophe that we have ever endured. On the 17th of January 1957 at 10 o'clock in the morning, 2,600 square meters of limestone has fallen down, crushing therefore 3 houses and a barn before finishing into the river, forming an amount of 10 meters of boulders. You can guess that there were already 3 people dead. The people that were living inside the first building to be touched. It was 2 widows from the First World War and an ancient from the terrible Battle of Verdun in 1915. Peace to their soul. But let's observe that it could have been much worse because we were on a Thursday morning. Actually, in France, on the Thursday morning in 1957, the kids didn't have to attend school. This is why you can imagine the terror of the mother wondering if their kids are not underneath that terrible amount of boulders. At that time, there will be what we call the miracle. The house that is on the side over here with its 2 stages and white lantern used to be a convent house. In the middle of the panic crowd, the doors getting open, a large nun came out of the place, followed by 30 kids that were perfectly safe because they were coming out of their Bible school. This is why into this village since 70 years now, we still repeat that at least on that morning, the kids have been saved by their Bible school. Let's observe that if it has been rather a football game, I guess the conclusion would have been otherwise, isn't it? There's a lot of castle in the area. This one is probably the youngest one of the 1,000 that you can see in the surrounding. It has been achieved in 1924, so it's got the same age as the Geneva Convention that is right off each morning. This place used to be the residency of a former ambassador, His Excellency the Count of Saint-Hilaire de Beaupoil, that used to be the ambassador of the French Republic in the UK during the First World War. You didn't have seen a ghost, actually. This is one of the countess that you can see up there. She's a sweet little teenager, and she's the last descendant of that family. So that means that you just couldn't visit the castle because the descendants are still living inside. So you got to wait that they're going to take their holidays. During the summertime, it is possible to rent the whole place for 6,000 euros, an accessible price that's going to give you access to the library, the swimming pool, and the torture chamber that is at the base. It's not an option on French castle, you know.
Is that 6,000 euro?
Yeah, no, a week, precisely. Yes, you know, rich people are less rich than the rich people of your country. 2 twin houses that are quite sinister. We used to call them sick houses. The people that got the plague, leper, or other sickness of that kind, most of them infectious, were put away from the community, not to be cured. Actually, there was no way to do so before Louis Pasteur in the 19th century. The idea was just to keep you aside from the community to avoid any contamination. I guess it will give you some good benefits as well. So let's observe that it will be the case in Europe till the 19th century, and it was the only way to treat those pandemics. By doing so, by locking down people, it was a way to manage the risk. Remember that the Black Plague in 1347-1348 has killed roughly 2/3 of the population of that continent on a single winter. That is quite heavy. So the Italian folks in the 15th century is going to invent those houses that got as a function to remove the sick people and to avoid any contamination. It is quite simple, but it has worked. Many episodes of plague has been taking place in France since the Middle Age. The last one has appeared in the book The Harper of Marseille in 1917. So you got an iron platform that is up there. A few people are looking at you actually, so try to find. And the place is probably the highest lookout point that you can reach to the valley. To look over there, I will discourage you to climb up the rocks. Be careful. Managed under the reign of Louis XIV by one of the ministers of His Majesty. So it is what we call the splendid garden of Marquesas. If you're reaching the place, just walk around, reaching the lookout platform. So this is the second castle of that fine castle map. There's another castle in the part where you can see the camping station. Actually, it is a dungeon dating from the 13th century, and it is the castle that used to be the place where the French king has led the French to victory during the 100-year war. I guess you don't remember that much about that war as well. So I got to summarize it quite fast. It is a war of 160 years. So it has started with a wedding. That could be so. In the 11th century, Eleanor, that you know under that name, has wed up. She was the Duchess of Aquitaine with Henri Plantagenet, the King of England, Henry II. By this wedding, the history of those two countries is going to change hardly. During a century, the part of the river that is still the ocean on that part is going to be English and managed by the King of England for its royal custom, the King of France. So this is business as usual. But in 1334, the last king of the Capitulate has died out without any descendant. So the throne of France is nothing to buy. We got to find a replacement, and there are two candidates. The first one is Edward III of England, that is the stepson of Eleanor, and considering that he's got some rights for that. The other one is Philip VI de Valois, that is chosen in Paris, and the King of England is quite predicted. He reveals to lead allegiance to the King of France. This is the beginning of the 100-year war in 1337. From that day, this river is a border. On that side, France, land of liberty, and of 400 different kind of cheese. On the other side, Timbuktu City, the somber England, a terrible land where it is raining all the time, and people's got only two cheese, actually cheddar and Stilton. So just like the gold was saying, we can see where is standing civilization. So the castle is going to be seized back in 1442 by the King of France himself, sending 400 gold pieces to the local landlord. That kind of a deal is going to permit the King of France to win the last of the war over 11 years. So that castle is the place where France has begun to liberate itself from the English occupation. And we are still remembering it over here. You have done the same a little bit later, actually, with the help of the Kingdom of France as well. Remember, actually, your war of independence has been won because the Kingdom of France was irritated against England and wanted to win. Because of that, you are free now. Without France, you will still be loyal subject of its gracious majesty. Actually, you remember about Lafayette. I'm pretty sure Lafayette is known by everyone. He was a big mouth. The Greek guy that has done the job was called Rochambeau. It was the admiral of the Royal French Fleet. He's going to wind up the Battle of Yorktown around the coast of Virginia. and then he's going to pick up a souvenir to bring back into his homeland, a maple that is coming from North Carolina. It is called Negundo, and it is almost hidden all into the landscape, well adapted to the French river, that is the Dordogne, with another famous American transfuge, the muskrat, that we are making some tasty food pate over here. You're going to try it. You know, a muskrat is just like a rabbit that know how to swim, that's all.
Muskrat's just like a rabbit that knows how to swim. Yeah. It's just like a rabbit that knows how to swim.
There's a lot of people that are making canoe, as I was saying. It is 6,000 canoes per day during the summertime. And actually, most of the French people do know how to manage a canoe. There are a few exceptions, making me wondering how the Frenchman has done to discover the Mississippi. It was not probably the same, actually. We've got a large coral reef that is standing as a fossil over the house with the blue windows. Just take your eye from the chimney, from the house of the blue windows, and then take your eyes at 4 meters higher. You're going to see something that looks like a giant sponge to me inside the rock. Oh, this is a coral reef, madam, that is dating from 80 million years ago. At that time, this country was almost at the Tropic of the Cancer. So it is the sea that has submerged for the last time that area, reaching the Massif Central. So there's going to be the formation of those coral reefs. According to the main authorities, there was one of them that was starting from Pau in the Pyrenees till the city of Limoges after Bordeaux, 450 kilometers long, 1/5 of the Great Australian Barrier. So what was looking like that valley during those days? Well, Bermudas or Florida Keys, with some translucent 21 degrees salted water permitting the formation of those coral reefs. How could that be? Because at that time there were still not the large mountain chains that are the Pyrenees and the Alps. These gonna be born around 40 million years ago, and because of that, that part of the country has been then since elevated. We are now at 60 meters above the sea level. When the coral reef has formed, we were probably at 5 meters, not that much. So the France éternelle, just like was saying ago, that's changing all the time, actually.
Yeah.
Well, everything's changed upon that word indeed. And actually it was the same thing for North America. In Quebec, my country land, we've got the first amphibian to have emerged from the sea. And at that time, Quebec was around Panama Canal. So you can figure out that everything has changed. So I told you about the tax break. That was our award to the fact to have repulsed the Viking, remember. And that tax break is going to last 700 years. That means that our village is going to be well deserved by that absence of imposition till the revolution. The three-quarters of the population of that village were all of aristocratic branding. And at the moment of the revolution, there were some books that were sent to Paris where people could complain about their situation, mentioning that over here, with three-quarters of people that were aristocrats, that were elevating artificially the price of the food. So this is one of the things that people were complaining about in the area. So let's observe that the tax break is going to be damaged by Louis XIV and that terrible long reign that was 75 years of duration, just like the one of Victoria. Louis XIV is going to centralize income tax collection from Paris, avoiding all local landlords to do so anymore, making a strong change into the history of that country about centrality. But it's going to have an effect on our village as well. Remember that over here, the bishop has also pursued that tax break. So in 1672, the minister of the king itself, called Colbert, is going to ride up to the bishop, asking him politely, as the owner of our village, to pay back to the royal treasury the 700 years of unpaid tax. So that's a sticky situation. So the bishop's gonna sell this river, this village, to his brother. By this way, some part of the money is gonna be already earned. The rest gonna come from the fact that we're gonna do just as once President Reagan has said, tear down those walls. By doing so, we're gonna sold the stone on the market of building construction, and by this way it was possible to pay back the king. The only thing to do actually, Louis XIV's got a bad temper. He could send you in Canada for less than that. So the consequence for us is going to be flooding all springtime. And actually the abyss one has been taking place in 1863 in the midst of your terrible civil war. On that year, actually, in the springtime, the level of the water has reached the second floor of all those houses. This is why today in the local memory, everybody knows by heart that the basis of those houses should be only commerce. And everything's got to be removed for the 1st of December in case of floodings.
Okay.
At the summit of the rock, you can see an anti-avalanche fences. That is an offering from our Swiss neighbor. Swiss people are quite nice. These have invented milk chocolate. But this fence is quite also efficient. It's going to stop the boulder actually. It's got double post triangle of suspension and some roll ring that are permitting to stop the boulder to fall. Underneath, we got those concrete columns that has been installed in 2010. On that winter, some slice of the ceiling has fallen down. It was 5 tons. You can see the scar between the columns over there. Actually, the block has been removed with a cable and then swing on the other side of the Dordogne. Then the Swiss has installed those 8 columns to make sure that the place is going to be consolidated. So if you dare to go that, I guess you can do that for a few minutes. Still, it's going to be 7 euros. But before going up there, I may advise you to call one of your close. We never know what could happen afterwards.
Oh, great.
So this village is probably the third more visited by my French cousin, where they are taking their holidays on their national soil after Mont-Saint-Michel in Normandy and Rocamadour that I guess you have seen in southern France as well. So thank you for your attention and your clever politeness to my terrible mistake that I've committed in your language. I told you I'm a French Canadian, so that's not my first language. I do apologize. I wish you the best for your nice tour into France. And I will ask you politely to not annex my country. Thank you very much.